Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast. Ooh. This is the podcast where 4 psychotherapists, 3 of us Canadian, 1 of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am Dr. Ryan Howes, a fly fisherman from Southern California.
Do you actually fly fish? We'll have to get back to that. I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a hobby crocheter from Port Moody.
Hello, I'm Joanna Boyd, a mushroom gatherer from the Pacific Northwest.
Wow. And I'm Chris Boyd, a amateur backup dancer from Coquitlam.
Nice.
You guys are great. These are when
I
we
have gathered
switch.
mushrooms. I have. It's something I've gone out and picked mushrooms before.
Yeah, it's actually quite the trend up here now, it seems. Like a lot of people forage for mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
For their own cooking pleasures, right?
Yeah.
So what does it mean to forage anyway? Is that like to explore, to analyze the ground,
And gather,
to move majestically
to
through the
go
timbers?
find items and then bring them back.
Yeah. Is it
Search.
like gather, forage? Yeah. I guess so.
Like seek and search and explore and then bring back, I think.
It's definitely a term that's used widely for picking mushrooms.
Foraging for mushrooms.
Exactly
That's
what you're
just what it's
doing. You're searching, you're going out searching for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I rarely do people go out and do that themselves, like unless you're hunting or berry picking. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. You know, as psychotherapists, we're kind of foragers as well, aren't we? We're not gathering food, but we're looking for, connections and interesting data that we can use to help our clients, right?
true.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, that's corny.
Tell us more about fly fishing. We'll switch that back on. Are you a fly fisher?
I've been a few times, but it was really in my youth up in the woods of Oregon on the nice rolling rivers. There's a little bit of fly fishing that goes on down here. I actually haven't been in Southern California. I haven't been fly fishing, but in my youth, I did a bit of that. Learned how to cast. Never got to the point of tying my own flies or anything like that, but it was a lot of fun.
Neat.
Yeah. Kind of a cool thing.
That's cool. And my main modality of fishing would be trolling.
Okay.
You sit in the boat and you put the line out and you just kind of, gently cruise around the lake.
That's it.
It's fun.
Beverage in hand.
Maybe a beverage in hand, possibly. Yeah.
I like it. And amateur backup dancing. Is that
That's a hobby. Yeah.
I think you're just being a silly goose. When was the last time you were a backup dancer?
We're on the spot here. Last Tuesday? No, I'm not quite sure. Let me think here.
who are you backing up?
I think it was more like just a spontaneous dance party.
I see.
And then, maybe someone else kind of jumps in the middle. You're just kind of in the background there, not trying to steal the thunder. You're just kind of moving around.
Okay. So you're a background dancer, not a
Okay.
backup dancer.
Maybe it's more a background dancer. Doesn't
There we go.
quite sound as exciting, does it?
No.
But I've had a few dance offs. Last one I did, against my nephew, like last summer, the summer before, I can't remember.
That was great.
Should have totally won that, but I think it was a tie. It was to the jitterbug. Had some dance moves and stuff. It was good.
I think that song will always remind me of DC at the dance party at the symposium we went to. So good.
Yes.
I think I have nightmares about the jitterbug dance.
Yeah, so Joanna has a jitterbug move that she does. don't even know how you describe that. It's like hands on your hips and you kind of shuffle around in a circle. So like,
They're
And then
really-
it just keeps going and going. It's exhausting. It's an and now it's that's just what we do every time it comes on.
yeah. It's a
Great.
pretty amazing place to be. The Psychotherapy Networker Symposium dance party on the Friday night of the conference. Lots of different types of movement happening.
Yes.
We'll do a plug for them. Psychotherapy Network Symposium in Washington, D.C. at the Omni Shoreham Hotel, March 10th through the 13th.
2
And
weeks. Sorry, 2 months from now.
2 months from now, right? Got a bunch of good speakers. I'll be there. You guys are probably not going to make that trip.
Probably not.
Probably not these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I
But there's
get it.
a hybrid approach this year. You could go in person or be online.
That's right.
Lots of really good stuff. I definitely think I take away something I feel like I'm a better therapist when I leave every time I go. So
Very
take
true.
away something new, and typically it's something a little newer than what's being presented locally. Tangible skills, ideas, resources. Highly, highly recommend it.
True. I
Yes.
always feel like a better background dancer when I go to the symposium. I always learn a move or two.
The thing that sets this apart from a lot of other psychology conferences is it's very, very practical. Like they really push the speakers to okay, what would this look like in session, and what do you actually there's some theory and there's some bit of research that people will talk about, but it's really about trying to help clinicians kind of hone their craft. And there's tons of topics, tons of different workshops to go to. Esther Perel, Stephen Hayes, Emily Nagoski, a lot of other great folks will be there. So that's cool. And Brooke will be watching from home and maybe crocheting, right?
Maybe I'll be watching from home. I'm not sure.
And Dr. Ryan will be doing a presentation on foraging for friendships.
The therapist as a forager.
Yeah.
Talk all about trying to pick through the fungus of your lives.
Whoa.
Subtitle beyond that is the fine print will be the use of metaphor in therapy.
Of course. That's exactly it. Yeah. So that's cool. Well, good. I learned something new about you guys every time. Chris, I already knew you were a dancer, so I didn't need to know that, but everybody else, it's good stuff. Well, good. Shall we jump into our topic?
I think so. Let's do this. Let's ambush.
Let's ambush. I get to be the ambusher tonight. So this will be my topic. And a bit of it comes from personal experience. I'm sure you all have your own personal experiences with this. But, okay, ready? You guys don't know the topic? I do. Here it comes. Let's talk about grumpiness. What is it? Why do we feel grumpy sometimes? Can it be damaging? What can we do about it for ourselves or for others if we notice someone in our lives are grumpy? Grumpy is one of those terms that we talk about all the time. It's not doesn't have a DSM diagnosis, it's not an official disorder or anything like that. But since this is a mental health podcast, I think it's fair game for us to talk about a case of the grumpies.
That
Sounds good.
interesting. I actually don't use the word grumpy very often as I'm reflecting on all the other words that I use, which could be synonyms, not synonyms, for grumpy. I don't actually use the word grumpy a lot. And just as a total side note, I asked a colleague the other day how she was feeling. She is a massage therapist.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I'm feeling quite nimble." And I was like, wow, I really got to start using the word nimble. So I feel like grumpy just reminded me of that. It's a word that I don't use very often, but I think it's very applicable.
Okay, that's fair.
Grumpy.
What about you guys? Is this a America-Canada difference here? Do you guys hear grumpy very often?
Oh, I think so. I don't think it's talked about a lot, but I think, people joke about or for a good reason about, being grumpy in the morning before they have their first cup of coffee, or
Sure.
yeah, that's what I associate it more with, or just kind of having an off day, kind of just a bit grumpy. But oh yeah, I would say I've been grumpy. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. I think it's a fairly common term. I think when I'm reflecting on it now, it can definitely capture more of a one-off situation, like, oh, he's grumpy today or irritable. But I
Yeah.
have found though that sometimes it becomes more of a trait that people tend to be described as, right?
Oh, really?
My good friend Jordan, his dad, it was joked that he was grumpy, and instead of his grandkids calling him grandpa, he's called grandpa. So I think
Is-
sometimes the term follows people around, right?
It's truly fused with his identity.
Yeah.
He is Grandpa. Yes. Get that.
Yeah. Or think
Well-
of the movie Grumpy Old Men with Jack Lemmon.
Or
Mhm.
I have a grumpy mug, one of the Seven Dwarves.
Oh yeah, grumpy.
This was the one that stood out when I went to the Disney shop in Disneyland. I was like, I think that I've felt this, and I think yeah.
Perfect. You have a prop.
Do.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so let's, the best as we can, since we're all about defining our terms. How would you try to define, or without looking it up, everybody, don't jump to your Googles, but how would you define grumpiness, the state of grumpiness?
Feeling crabby.
Just a synonym. Okay. It's good.
No, easily irritated
Yeah.
or irritable, maybe a bit disgruntled. I guess you don't need to be disgruntled about something. I think you're just kind of, you're in your own space. You're kind of like, not really talkative, maybe just easily irritable.
Yeah. And maybe a bit more critical or cynical than you would be if your mood was maybe a bit lighter. I also think of like furrowed brow, like where you look grumpy. I find that, yeah, when somebody feels grumpy, they look grumpy. Like it's just this tense, kind of irritable thing.
Yeah. I was thinking short-tempered. Kind of negative though, right?
Yeah.
Seeing things in a negative lens, like we're filtering everything in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
a sense of like a little bit of hopelessness almost to it. Like, well, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. Brrr.
Or maybe cynical.
Yeah, that's why I was like cynical, critical,
Pessimistic.
pessimistic.
I think if someone's grumpy, they're not going to be super approachable. They're not going to be super personable. They might be like, I'm going to leave them alone for a sec. But I think it was used more trait wise, consider people who are grumpy. But if they're just feeling grumpy, I'm going to leave them alone. I kind of know this is when they might be a bit grumpy, or maybe people have bad days. They could be grumpy. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan? How would you define it?
I love all the terms you're using here. The irritability, negative, cynical, pessimistic stuff. I do think there's a physical manifestation, like you're saying, people can look, you can kind of tell when, especially someone you're close to, you can kind of tell if they're grumpy. And there's there's not, I think there's something about the energy level too. It seems like this kind of slower but negative energy level. Maybe I'm thinking of the coffee stuff again, but like, it just seems like, don't bother me, don't come close. I don't really have, I don't think of a yelling person as being grumpy. That seems we're just angry, right? Or not really all that animated. It's like this sullen sort of withdrawn negative place.
Yeah, kind of pouty.
Kind of like Harumph, like bah humbug.
Yeah.
Maybe like Scrooge. Maybe Scrooge would be grumpy. Maybe.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
I think Scrooge would be grumpy. Yeah.
Okay. So the big question, why? Why do we feel grumpy sometimes? There could be many different, this is where we do our exploration. Why do you think people might wake up on the wrong side of the bed, so to speak, right?
I guess one actually.
Yeah.
Wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You don't
Don't
get
have
enough sleep.
Yeah.
Tired.
Somebody stole their blanket.
Burning the midnight oil. Yeah.
Okay, so just exhaustion, tiredness, right? People can be more prone to that if they're having a slow start.
Yeah, some people take a bit more time to wake up. They kind of just want to be left alone for a little bit. Maybe that doesn't make grumpiness. Maybe they just want some time to, I don't know, start their day by themselves a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. Along the same lines, maybe like if you're not eating enough, so
Mhm.
more physiological, you feel kind of hangry, is it?
Hmm. Yeah, it's almost like that acronym HALT, HALT, hungry, alone,
Angry.
or angry. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's a pretty good recipe for grumpy.
Sure is.
Yeah.
So you could have some physical stuff with that. I think a lot of people who overdo the drinking would hangover and grumpy kind of go hand in hand a lot of times, right?
Oh, if you have kind of a crummy day, but I feel like this could be synonymous with just someone calling someone moody. Maybe that's another grumpy. You just don't hear grumpy as much, maybe, but your day could kind of not go so well. Something might be, put you off, and you're just like, you're just not really in a good mood. But
Sure. Okay. Yeah, there could be something on your mind. There could have been a string of bad news or bad events in your life that kind of make you start to feel that irritability and that hopelessness Brooke was talking about.
Yes, that's more like situational.
yeah,
So I guess it could also be some underlying stuff going on as well.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just having more of a pessimistic, negative outlook. I don't know if it's people like, I guess, just if you tend to operate more that way, or you might tend to be grumpier.
Yes. So I think if there's a diagnosis that were to fit closest with this, it would be what we call dysthymia or persistent depressive disorder, which would be like if you've been grumpy for 2 years, right? It's like it has to be pretty persistent, long-term, kind of a low-grade depression, milder depression that lasts for a long time. It would fit into that sort of category, wouldn't you say?
I guess in some ways. I
I
think
guess-
a really low mood, lack of motivation, or does that fit in with grumpy though, or dysthymia, lack of interest in things? I don't know if that matches grumpy. That's
I
what
would think so.
dysthymia.
Yeah, it's also, I guess, if you're, if we're seeing grumpy again as a state someone's in or a trait that they have. So if they're grumpy all the time for 2 years, then it fits. But if they're grumpy once in a while, then that's probably kind of normal. We're all going to be grumpy at some point.
Gosh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not trying to just throw a diagnosis on people every time they have a bad day, but I was just saying if there's one sort of corner of the DSM that this might be associated with, it would be in the depressive disorders and maybe
or maybe even, I don't, maybe a little bit of a adjustment disorder. Like, I'm just thinking if the precursor was something challenging happened, or a loss, or an accident, things didn't go your way, or car was broken into, whatever it was, series of unfortunate events, and having difficulties adjusting or transitioning in
Mhm.
some way. Like, obviously, again, it is quite different when it's a disorder, but I wonder if maybe that would fit a bit too.
Yeah.
I could see that. Yes, adjusting having to do with reacting to events in your life,
Mhm.
changes, and the strain and stress that can cause, for sure.
Mhm.
I think it could also be hormonal. I had a client who was menopausal, and she just noticed an increased level of what she referred to as crankiness or grumpiness, having a hard time managing some of the emotions. So it could be again back to the physiological stuff.
Mhm.
Lots of different causes, eh? It varies.
Totally. Yes. Yeah, I think when I'm grumpy, it has to do with sleep often, and sleep, and maybe if it feels like there's just been a string of unfortunate events or bad news or something going along. I'm like, ugh, like I've had this pile of chores I need to do around the house, and I don't really feel like it, and I'm tired, and I just want to chill, but I have a lot of things to do. That can get me kind of grumpy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, okay. Can it be damaging? Or what damage can grumpiness do, if any?
I think so,
Socially?
because if it's ongoing, then it's going to be isolating.
Yeah. It affects your interpersonal relationships.
Even
Like,
though I can't.
be around, or people might just have a hard time interacting with you.
Yeah.
If
No,
that's
good
kind of
point.
your constant, if you're often that way, or how you're treating others, if you are feeling grumpy, versus, hey, I'm kind of feeling grumpy right now, I'm not the best to be around, I'll get back to you, versus maybe just if you're like that all the time, might be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, may alienate the people closest to you for sure. Yeah, good point.
It's interesting because grumpy, I guess a lot of things fall into this category, but grumpy tends to be one of those things that people don't always notice when they're in that spot.
Mhm.
Sometimes they just feel like, well, life is miserable right now. Or like, this is just the way it is. Maybe they can look back and say, oh yeah, I was really grumpy that day. But when they're in the moment, and sometimes saying to someone, oh, you're pretty grumpy today, that's going to tick them off, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
So being able to have that self-awareness that you're talking about, Joe, if you know yourself that you're grumpy and you can kind of warn the people around you, I think that's a great place to be if you can get to that spot.
But maybe not as common as one would hope.
Maybe not as common, sure.
Yeah. Kind of curious. Well, actually, before I ask that question, I'm sure it impacts you physiologically as well. Like if you're just constantly in this cranky, grumpy state, it could have, I'm sure, lead to some medical issues and concerns. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but just the mind-body connection again. If you're in that state, then I'm sure it's not the healthiest for your cardiovascular system, for instance. But
It's true. Sure. Well, and then considering the things that people do, like Joe, you mentioned coffee right away, and that's a common thing for people who like drink a lot of coffee, wake up in the morning, maybe have a difficult time going to sleep, maybe not, but wake up in the morning, you're like, I need to have this coffee to function, and I'm going to be grumpy until I get that coffee. Sort of marks a bit of a dependence on the coffee, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's that's something to consider as well.
Mhm.
Not that coffee's the worst thing in the world or caffeine the worst in the world, but as we've talked about with sleep hygiene a few times, too much caffeine can mess with your sleep cycle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
kind of curious, does being grumpy ever pay off for you? Is there any benefits to being grumpy?
Yeah, if you want to be alone.
Yeah, like a defense mechanism, I guess, so that
Yeah.
could potentially pay off.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone to approach you, or
Yeah.
to you don't want any negative attention from others. So
Or positive attention, like if there's in the past, if relationships haven't worked out and now there's a fear of those relationships because there's a negative belief that you're going to be hurt by them. Being grumpy is going to be a pretty good way to ward off people.
true. What happens if you're a lawyer? Or if you're a client who's looking for a lawyer, do you want someone who's super happy and optimistic, or do you want someone who's maybe a little more grumpy or, a little cranky?
Yeah, I guess depending on what you're looking for, there might be a case for a grumpy person in your corner.
Isn't there like stories about like, maybe some really well-known CEOs who tend to be quite grumpy?
Yeah, Steve Jobs was grumpy.
Yeah, Jobs and even Bezos, I heard he's quite grumpy. And so maybe it leads to more activity or more people scramble to try to appease you. I don't know. Maybe it pays off for
really under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I think at times I think I can be a bit of a people pleaser, and I don't think I approach Canadian levels of people pleasing, but or politeness. But at times I could be and by that I mean like maybe I'll allow my boundaries to be pushed more than they should be. I'm thinking now of sometimes though, Chris, if I'm in a grumpy mood, I'm kind of in a take no BS sort of an attitude, and I might be a little more assertive, a little more curt at times when that may actually be appropriate.
Speak your mind more.
Yeah.
Maybe more blunt.
Yeah.
Grumpiness might also then be connected a bit to selfishness.
Yeah.
It's more like, well, what do I need in this moment? And I'm not really caring too much how I'm delivering this or how you're going to take this, because I don't really care, because I just need this thing. Like I actually need to acquire a thing, or I need you to do this thing. Don't really care about the details.
Is the selfishness how it's delivered? Because we want to be careful with if you're asking for something for yourself or setting a boundary. Is it just...
it's selfishness in the sense like of it's like more for you, but you might have less care on how it's being delivered or the impact of that request on someone else. Right? So the delivery might not be as gentle or compassionate. It's probably more direct.
Yeah, that's a good point. If I'm shopping for a car, I don't mind being grumpy at that point.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like, I don't care what you the other person want, or like I just care what I need or want.
Yeah.
Has everyone here seen Elf, the Christmas movie? I feel like the dad, Walter Hobbs.
Yeah.
He's a grumpy man.
Christmas movies have grumpy people in them, okay?
Yeah. He's just like, yeah. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. I just thought about him. Just keep thinking of different grumpy people in our mainstream media.
That is a great point, Brooke. Almost every Christmas movie's got a grumpy person in it, right?
Yeah, and then by the end, the grumpy person's no longer grumpy.
That's so funny. It's true. We've got the Grinch, we've got Scrooge, we've got Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life. It's all sorts of grumpies, and they're all men.
Why is that?
Is there a gender difference? Interesting.
There, yeah. What if that was a female in the role? Would you still describe them as grumpy, or would they have been portrayed as grumpy? Or would they have been, I don't know, would there be a different word for that where it's, I don't know. I don't think emotional would be the right word. Cold. I think people would say the character was cold.
Yeah.
Or it'd be like a old hag, or there'd be some not very nice term, or
Sure. That's true. Yes. Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest could be called grumpy and cold and a lot of other things.
How about in Matilda, the whatever her name is, the mean principal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I was trying to. There's some women characters who can be not very kind. She never comes around, so I guess that's not a good turnaround point.
Mhm. Hmm. Do you guys think, if you're thinking about this more, maybe not for mainstream media, but do you feel that there would be a gender bias with that term? Whether it's kind of within yourself or with society or
Well, sure. I mean, going back to the media, the movie Grumpy Old Men, I mean, people often think of,
Yeah.
I think people associate grumpy oftentimes with men, but it's not exclusive, but that's an interesting one.
and why is that? Why do you think that might be?
Because maybe women are more socialized to be pleasant all the time, and men have the freedom to express their grumpiness outwardly.
Ooh, that's a good one, Ryan.
Yeah, I like that answer.
Wow.
Let's go with that one.
All right, well, that's all for tonight. Yeah,
You know, I mean, there's something to that, right? Like
I think so.
Yeah.
women are told, oh, you need to smile more, you know,
Oh yeah.
where's that smile, honey? You know, whereas men don't get that.
Well, we don't get it as much, since COVID because everyone has to wear a mask.
Sure.
So that's nice.
Right.
That is nice. Yeah.
You
Again,
have
it's kind of back to
resting
the
bitch face, right? That term,
yeah.
resting bitch face. You can
Yeah.
have that as much as you want. Nobody's going to call you out. It's great.
That's true. That's true.
But I do think, yeah, if a woman is showing similar behaviors, attitudes, tones as a grumpy man, she is going to be called a bitch.
There you go. There, yeah.
Yeah. Or
She's bitchy. Yeah, that would be
Or-
the term, I think.
I think
Or
there's
the-
many things that could fit into that term, but I think
yeah.
grumpy would be in there for sure.
Yeah.
For women. Yeah.
Men act that way in a business leadership position, and they're strong leaders and they take no crap or whatever. Women are bossy,
Yeah.
right? So there's all of that for sure.
Big discrepancy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or even, as Ryan, as you were talking about, like, and Chris, like grandpas, grumpy grandpas and whatnot. But yeah, you don't hear grumpy grandmas.
They
It's almost
exist.
like they're not allowed to be.
I've definitely met some, but yeah,
It's almost like they're not allowed to be grumpy, which is, well, that's not fair.
it's true. A lot of it's socially constructed, right? The expectation that a grandmother's supposed to be warm and welcoming and kind and caring, the homemaker. I think it's a generational thing too, right? Well, it'd be interesting to see how this plays out over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. But
Well,
yeah.
I'm from Generation X, and we've been grumpy all along. So that's kind of our stereotype.
Oh, we've noticed. We have noticed.
That's great. Yeah, leave us alone. No. Okay, so let's get to this. What can we do about it? Is there anything we can do about it for ourselves, or if we have a loved one who's seeming to be in a grumpy place? What do we do?
Well, what do you two think, you men? Us women, we're not grumpy ever. So what can you do about it, Ryan? What can you do about it, Chris, when you're feeling grumpy?
Good question. I think it's already kind of brought up earlier that you need to recognize the fact you are grumpy. I think that would be the first step, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're going to have that realization yourself, but be open to hearing feedback from others, not getting too defensive or angry when you hear that.
I don't know, from personal experience, I think if I've been in a mood and haven't realized it, or how I might speak to someone, I think Chris has called me on it a few times, which I've appreciated. Like, I think of a time I might be a little bit shorter in a conversation with, I don't know, I think of it like with my mom once, and Chris could be like, hey, or like, I don't know, I don't know what the wording was, but I'd be like, oh, I didn't even realize I was kind of saying it that way, and that did sound a bit short, and I think I am in a bit of an irritated state, or I'm not speaking very nicely, and I know Chris has done that a few times for me, and which I've appreciated. But otherwise, you might not kind of realize how you're speaking to someone sometimes, or how you might be feeling in that moment or behaving, I guess. But I don't know. I think of that in a moment, I might be a bit grumpy or irritable.
Yeah, I think one of the most direct sort of solves of grumpiness for me would be talking about it, talking it out. But that can be one of the hardest things to do at the same time. Both to be able to articulate what it is that I'm actually grumpy about, or what's going on that's kind of at the root of that. And also, just as we talked about before, grumpiness kind of makes you want to isolate and pull back. I don't want to connect at this moment. I want to just kind of stew and sit in my junk, But really, once I do start talking about it, I usually feel a lot better pretty quickly.
Yeah. If I feel grumpy or irritable, I think I'm getting better at catching it. But I ask that question, why? Like, what the heck is going on here? Is it the fact that I had a bad sleep last night, or am I hungry right now? Try to rule out the physiological stuff. Brooke mentioned the halt stuff earlier. So I try to look at that first. Or is there rumination going on? Is there negative self-talk? Is there what's going on the psychological level there? Is there some tension or pressure in my body? So try to be Sherlock Holmes there. See if I can kind of piece it together. And that kind of informs what to do next, right? So if you're tired, of course, to have tons of coffee. Yeah.
Or even just start making a plan. If it's about I've got too much on my to-do list for today, then okay, small steps, start knocking things out. Usually feel better. Once I start making progress on something. Sure.
Some of it is like, just sometimes we take on too much, right? You just feel stressed, and you're like, okay, I'm being short with people, or I feel agitated. Like, you just do a bit of a check-in there, and your heartbeat's elevated, and your breathing is shallow. You're like, oh man, I'm tense, right? So that awareness is so important.
I'm with you guys. I'm a big fan for, if I'm feeling grumpy, I think the name it to tame it stuff for me is huge. Just to be able to be like, I am grumpy right now. I'm irritable. I'm snappy. I'm short. I'm like, ooh, I'm being really reactive. Like, I'm noticing, if my dogs are barking, that I'm clenching my teeth, or I'm dropped a utensil in the kitchen and I feel like I want to scream, or just these pieces where then I can name that I know that I'm being short and snappy and reactive. And I think for me, it's what works well for me is almost like the timeout or creature comforts kind of stuff, where I'm like, okay, I need to go get some fresh air, or I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. I'm going to sit on the couch and look out the window. I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to collect myself, and then I'm going to move forward and acknowledge this, right? Like, so kind of acting the opposite, not letting it continue, knowing, hey, I'm at my limit and I need to do something about this. So yeah, and absolutely evaluating, where is this coming from? Is this stress related? Is it because I haven't eaten yet? That definitely gets to me. I get very short and irritable. And
it happened last week, right?
Yeah.
You're feeling irritable, like, I need to have a snack right now.
Yeah. I'm very
late. Yeah, if I'm late for this next thing, that's okay. Probably a few minutes. I need to take a few moments.
Yeah. So being aware kind of the creature comforts, or how to take care of yourself, knowing what those signs are and what to do.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk about awareness, naming it, trying to identify what's going on there. Maybe talking it out, maybe doing some like self-care stuff, go for a walk, eat something, stare out the window, and just take care of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like a solution focused approach. So if there are some issues, some circumstantial stuff going on, then do some writing. So write down maybe some of the stuff that's bothering you. I know we've talked about this before, but Jamie Pennebaker, University of Texas, been researching this for probably 26 years now. He said just start writing for 20 minutes on whatever's bothering you the most and kind of let it flow. Or just maybe to do, write down a list of things that you need to achieve, like brainstorm some ideas to navigate through the situation effectively.
Great.
Yeah, and I think an important one, well, or for myself at least, I know, after that phase of, okay, I expressed it or I calmed down or whatever, is taking the step to move forward with openness and kindness, and like an attitude of gratitude or an attitude of service to others. So if I know I've been grumpy, then I, like, after I've calmed down or collected myself or eaten or done whatever I need for the self-care, it's like, okay, so-and-so colleague, you needed this, let me get that to you now. Or let's make a joke with someone that I'm running into in the hallway. Let's smile at someone. Let's, like, how do I now interact with the world in a positive way?
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And also, if you are grumpy to someone, then own that, right?
Yeah.
So I think Joanna's done this in the past where if she was grumpy, she sent me a text later or call, say, oh, sorry, I think I was a little short with you. It's not easy to do that, but it's often appreciated, right? So
Definitely. Damage control. You bet.
damage control. Yeah. Get into that state a bit. It actually strengthens connections with people.
Goes a very
To
long
own
way.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, of course, a large dose of Christmas spirit that solves grumpiness, doesn't it? Or we watched the story about Charles Dickens writing, of course, the iconic Christmas story there, and compassion, right? Or doing something to benefit someone else, like to ease someone else's suffering, to give someone else a boost. So kind of back to what Brooke was saying there too, making it about someone else.
Compliment someone, ask how their day is going, get outside of yourself and get into someone else's world. And
yeah, give Bob Cratchit a bit of a raise and
yeah,
a festive bird for his meal, Christmas dinner.
This is all great stuff for what you can do if you identify grumpiness in yourself. What happens if it's a friend, coworker, loved one, someone you're interacting with, and you get the sense that, wow, she or he woke up on the wrong side of the bed today? What do you think? I know it's got to differ from person to person, but generally speaking, what do you think?
yeah. Often if it's someone that I have a relationship with, I will bring it up, right? Like, oh, you seem grumpy, or what is going on here is probably more how I would do it. What is this? What is happening here?
You might say something like, you're not so nimble today.
Yeah, exactly. You're not very nimble.
Yeah, I think the language of just, how are you doing? You seem to be having a bit of a hard time, or anything going on, or anything I can do for you.
Yeah, go-to for many people in, like, blanket statement is, I'm noticing something's off, like your energy's off today. Is everything okay? Your vibe's off. What's going on?
Yeah, for sure. And for people that you maybe don't know as well, try not to take it personally. There's a lot of reasons why that person's grumpy, and maybe it might be more of a trait or characteristic that's been developed over a number of years. But sometimes we have this tendency to make it about ourselves. Say, well, what did I say or what did I do? Right. And that can actually dominate our minds as a result, kind of throw us off and impact our ability to engage in our day. Sometimes people are grumpy. There's not much we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just approaching with trying not to be judgmental and be like, oh man, like, yeah, like you're so like grumpy, as if it's a judgment, like they're being judged for it or something. I think it's just more checking in and seeing what's
Yeah.
going on. I think that's
It actually applies for people you know or people you don't know, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes we have these quick assumptions about folks that we don't know,
Mhm.
and can describe them in a pretty mean way. But hey, we don't know what their story is like. We don't know what their day's been like. So it might be a lot of reasons, circumstances why they're feeling that way. So I like that non-judgmental piece.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking like for people that are very far removed from you, so the bank teller, the cashier at the store, just these people that are you're passing by each other in just short moments, and you're probably not going to see this person again. Or maybe you do if you frequent the place, but this little brief moment far out in your circle. And if that person seems grumpy or whatever, you're probably not going to stop and be like, "You're right. You seem a little off today." Like, you're not going to have that conversation with them. So often what I'll do if somebody is kind of has that energy to them after I leave, I kind of talk to myself. I'm like, "Oh, that person's having a bad day." And then I like talk under my breath and send them like kind of a kind wish. Like, "Oh, well, I hope their day gets better or whatever is going on for them clears up." And just sending that out can sometimes relieve that interaction that you've had so that you're not taking that energy with you.
And also checking yourself so that you're not just assuming the worst of them. Be like,
Yeah.
let me just send them a wish versus think bad things about them.
Mhm.
That's a nice one. I like that.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, like I hope they're okay. I hope their family's well or whatever's going on for them clears up. And
Yeah, I think if you know someone well around you, you might notice when they tend to get grumpy or not, or if you share a home with them, or without even saying something, you might be able to take something off their plate or do something nice for them, or kind of just, I don't know, a nice gentle or just a hug, or hey, do you want to go do this, or invite them to do something. So don't necessarily need to be like, you what's up and tell me what's wrong, but you might be able to notice, given your relationship, something you could do that might alleviate that mood for them.
Yeah.
Something different.
My brother-in-law told me a story. I guess it was like kind of a friend situation here. But two friends would walk down and catch the bus together to go to work. And they'd stop at this little grocery store to buy a newspaper and coffee or something. And the fellow that works at the grocery store is usually very, very grumpy, right? So the one guy who buys the newspaper is like, "Hey, how's your day going today?" He's like, "Bruh," he just kind of grunts a bit and complains about something. He's like, "Okay, well, have a nice day." And this goes on and on and on every day. So the other friend was like, I don't get it. Every single day you treat him with such positivity and kindness, or you're just so upbeat with him, but he just gives you nothing back. Like, why do you even try? And his response is great. He said, "I don't want his grumpiness to impact how I treat him." Right. So he doesn't want that to change how he treats others, how he acts and how he engages in the world. Right. That was kind of cool, because sometimes it creates a bit of a chain reaction. Someone's grumpy, then you get grumpy, and then blah, blah, blah. And things can escalate so quickly. Right.
I think it's a hard skill to do, but giving permission, like it's not giving permission, but that's just the phrase that I use, like um for yourself within you to give permission for the other person to be who they are, right? Like, I'm not there to change that other person. I need to get that through my head, and I need to give them permission to be who they are and me to be who I am, and not to take that on. And I think that was a good example of that, right? Like, we give permission to that fellow to be grumpy, and that's who he's going to be. But that doesn't have to impact how I interact with him.
Yeah. What do you think, Ryan?
I think, yeah, I agree with that. I love that idea of kind of it's almost your own kindness, whether it's a good wish or a kind interaction with the person, is actually sort of a protection, sort of an armor for you to not have the contagion of grumpiness take you over, right?
Mhm.
I also think of, as we're talking about this, and remembering what a therapist told me once, which was his take on grumpiness, or he's either talking about grumpiness or moodiness, and there may be some distinctions there we can address sometime. But he talked about that being kind of stuck halfway in an emotion, right? Like you're not fully angry, or else you would just, I mean, if you were fully in touch with the anger and expressing it, you might actually get through it quicker because you're expressing it, getting it off your chest, and admitting to it or whatever that might be, and then maybe you're quicker to actually find a solution. But this grumpiness thing, you're kind of halfway in it and kind of halfway not. You're not fully invested in your anger. And
that's a good point. You're kind of stewing in it a bit.
You're stewing in it, and that's why it can last for hours or days or weeks, right?
Yeah, a good point.
And so I think what we're talking about here is, if you're with a loved one, someone that you're close with, and you feel like you're kind of in their inner circle, then you might want to open the door, make an invitation for them to go all the way. Let's hear what it is you're upset about. Looks like you're in your vibe is off, or not a great day for you. You want to talk about it, and maybe that kind of helps them to move into that emotion a little bit more and say, yeah, I'm actually really frustrated about X, Y, and Z. But if it's not someone that you're all that close with, and you just have a momentary interaction, you're not going to invite that necessarily. You just want to give an example of kindness in the world, or hey, this, not everyone's feeling this way, and also I'm not going to feel this way either. So have a good day, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of tough sometimes not to pick up on those vibes though, because you have these mirror neurons, right? Sometimes our bodies want to internalize the other person's state. So to breathe through that a bit, just catch yourself so we're not being irritable or grumpy back.
But what a gift to try and like overpower the grumpy state with a positive state. Like, because if they're going to mirror to you a little bit too, right?
Yeah,
So
a little bit.
It's like a Care Bear stare. Who's going to win?
That's a particular reference, Brooke. What's a Care Bear stare?
Well, isn't that when with the Care Bear tummies with their light streams from their tummies, and then that like can battle negative things? Isn't that part of the Care Bear stare? It's been a long time.
Works for me. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So expose your tummies to people who are grumpy.
But there's a light stream.
Make
But
a light stream.
there was a grumpy Care Bear, wasn't there? As well. He had like a rain cloud on his tummy.
Oh, I think so.
Did anyone? I don't.
Or was he like the villain? Was he like the bad Care Bear?
Joanna, were you ever into Care Bears?
I think I was on the tail end of it. I don't have a lot of. It was Grumpy Bear.
Yeah, there was a grumpy bear.
What do you know?
That's fitting, eh?
And it was a male. No, just kidding. Sorry, had to throw that in there because that's what it says, but I think that's funny. But
That is funny. Yeah, that's a little.
oh, just to defend the males, there's also Tender Heart Bear, and that's a male too. So.
Oh,
He's like the leader bear because, of course, it's a male leader.
were there?
This is.
Oh boy. Were
Right
there?
now,
There you go. We're
but this topic will be Care Bears. You guys will have to look into it. Well, I'll have to look into it.
Was there a grumpy Smurf as well? I don't know if you guys read the Smurfs at all. I don't know. Probably.
Probably, but there was only the one female Smurf, right?
I know.
Oh.
One of them. Poor thing.
Or Fraggles, Fraggle Rock. There must have been a grumpy Fraggle.
There was a grouchy Smurf, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All of these are clearly archetypes drawn from the Jungian world.
Of course, so obvious.
Obviously. Okay. Well, gosh, did we cover our ground on grumpiness?
I think so.
Anyone feeling particularly grumpy right now?
No.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. We talked it out.
Mhm.
Got in touch with those feelings. It's good.
Feeling emotionally nimble.
Oh, that's good. Nimble.
Nimble.
That's good. If we rename the podcast, we should name it the Nimble Podcast. Okay, well, that's it.
Or an acronym for something.
Probably. I guess that's it then. We covered our ground.
We did.
Wishing all of you a mild case of the grumpies, if any, and
Yeah.
identify it and talk about it, and don't let it infect your life.
And if you really want to, you can read Alan Gordon's The Way Out. That's our
We've
current book club book that we're going to be reviewing in, I think, 3 weeks, right?
3 weeks. And Chris
The
has also
Way
read
Out.
it so far.
Yeah, I've read it before. It's good.
And just a quick synopsis, real quick.
Pain, chronic pain, ways to help manage it.
Excellent. Good deal. Looking forward to reading that. And with that, we'll wrap up for tonight. So like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. Send your questions to us at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a grumpy friend or two, and we will bid you farewell. Good night, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.